This is the story of a beggar who asked for nothing, yet gave everything. And the 9 rules he lived by could change your life forever. In the winter of 2019, New Delhi railway station witnessed its coldest December morning in decades. The fog was so thick that trains arrived late by hours. The platforms were crowded with restless passengers, and the biting wind cut through layers of clothing. Among thousands of travelers, policemen, vendors, and beggars, sat one man, wrapped in nothing but a torn shawl. His beard was untrimmed, his hands rough like cracked stone, and his eyes carried an unsettling peace. He was a beggar, but unlike any other beggar you have ever seen, because this man never asked for money. Not once, not ever, and yet he would go on to change the lives of those who met him. It was December 22nd, 2019, 7:30 a.m. The station clock ticked above the fog. Vendors shouted, selling hot tea and pakoras. Porters dragged luggage carts across the wet floor. Arjun, a 28-year-old struggling businessman, walked hurriedly toward platform 6. His face was pale, his eyes heavy with sleeplessness. Only weeks ago, his startup had collapsed. Debt collectors were chasing him. His family avoided his phone calls. He was on the edge of giving up. But fate had different plans. As he rushed past the benches, his eyes caught the beggars. For a second, Arjun froze. There was no plea, no desperation, just calm, piercing stillness. He muttered irritably, "Another beggar," and walked on. But before boarding, something tugged at him. A strange pull. Arjun turned back. The beggar was scribbling in a torn diary with a tiny pencil. Curious and restless, Arjun walked toward him. "Why don't you beg like the others?" Arjun asked bluntly. The beggar looked up, a faint smile on his cracked lips. "Because, my son, I am not hungry for coins. I am hungry for souls to awaken." Arjun frowned. He should have walked away, but he didn't. "What's that book you're writing in?" Arjun asked. The beggar handed it over. Inside were dozens of pages, filled with words that looked simple, yet carried unbearable weight. Arjun read aloud. Rule number 1. The man who opens his hand for coins, closes it for blessings. Arjun stared at the words. What does that mean? The beggar explained softly. When a man lives only for coins, his hands remain forever stretched out, always wanting, never giving. But when he learns to close his hand to greed, he can open it to blessings, love, kindness, and dignity. Coins vanish, but blessings remain forever. Arjun thought about his own life, always chasing investors, running behind profit, begging for opportunities, yet never feeling whole. The beggar continued with a story. Once I met a man who had a palace full of gold, yet every night he wept alone. He stretched his hand for more wealth but never stretched his heart for blessings. He died rich, but empty. My son, never trade your soul for coins. Arjun's chest tightened. This stranger had already struck his heart. Rule number 2. The body needs food once a day. The heart needs kindness every hour. The beggar's voice grew gentle. Do you know why the world feels so heavy? Because people feed their stomachs but starve their hearts. A kind word, a gentle smile, a moment of compassion. This is the food of the soul. Without it, people become rich corpses walking in daylight. Arjun remembered shouting at his younger sister last week when she had called to console him. He had pushed away kindness, choosing his bitterness instead. The beggar shared another short tale. Once, a woman came to me with only half a chapati. She had nothing else. But when she broke it in two and gave me a piece, I realized she had fed not just my hunger, but my soul. That small act of kindness has lived with me for years, long after the bread was gone. Arjun whispered, Maybe that's why I feel so empty. I forgot to feed the heart. Rule number 3. Don't ask life to be fair. Ask yourself to be faithful. Arjun read this line twice. He clenched his fists. But life hasn't been fair to me. I worked hard. I sacrificed. I gave everything. And still I failed. The beggar placed his hand on Arjun's shoulder. Life is a storm, son. It is never fair. The rain falls on both the farmer and the beggar. But faithfulness, remaining true to your values, your purpose, your kindness, that is within your control. A faithful man cannot be defeated, because even in loss, he keeps his soul alive. He leaned closer and whispered, "Remember, unfaithful men can win the world and still lose themselves. Faithful men may lose the world but still win eternity." Arjun's eyes stung. He had blamed life, luck, fate, everything but himself. For the first time, he felt the weight of his own choices. That morning, Arjun missed his train. He didn't even care. He sat beside the beggar for hours, listening, absorbing. The beggar didn't preach. He told stories. A bird that continued singing after a storm. A broken pot that still carried water to the fields. A candle that burned itself only to give light. Each tale carried quiet power, piercing deeper than sermons. And from that day, Arjun returned to the station every morning. Not for travel, but for wisdom. Days turned into weeks. Every morning, Arjun found himself on that same platform, sitting beside the beggar. Sometimes they spoke for hours. Sometimes they sat in silence. But even silence with this man felt like wisdom. One morning, Arjun finally asked what had been circling in his mind. "Why don't you try to change your life? Get a job? Work? You're clearly wise. You could earn respect, money, maybe even teach." The beggar chuckled softly, eyes crinkling in the cold wind. Rule number 4. Change my life? Son, I already did. I let go of the race. I don't measure my worth by coins. I measure it by hearts I can touch. That's my wealth. He told a story. Long ago, I worked in a factory. Every day, I raced to earn more overtime, more money. One day, a poor worker fell sick, and instead of helping, I ran past him because I didn't want to lose my bonus. That evening, I earned a few coins, but lost my peace. Since then, I chose a different race. Not the race for wealth, but the race for humanity. Arjun lowered his gaze. All his life, he had been in a race too. A race to prove himself to investors, friends, society. And in that race, he had lost himself. Another day, the platform buzzed with passengers. A rich businessman, wearing a heavy gold watch, passed by the beggar. Without looking at him, the man tossed a few coins at his feet and walked away. The coins rolled on the ground, glistening in the fog. To Arjun's surprise, the beggar didn't pick them up. Confused, Arjun asked, "Why didn't you take it? You could at least buy food." The beggar looked calm, almost serene. Rule number 5. Because charity without respect is an insult. And I don't collect insults. He explained, when someone gives with pride, they are not giving, they are buying a moment of superiority. If I bend for such coins, I sell my dignity. Remember this, Arjun. True giving is when the giver and receiver are both honored. Never bow for money that robs your soul. Arjun felt his heart shiver. He remembered countless times when he had bent low to investors who humiliated him, begging for their approval. He realized he had collected not money, but insults. Over time, Arjun's heart began to heal. He started seeing the world differently. He no longer looked at success as a pile of profit, but as the number of lives he could impact. The beggar's words were shaping him like clay in the hands of a potter. One evening, as the sun set behind the crowded station, the beggar wrote another line in his diary and showed it to Arjun. Rule number 6. Wealth that cannot serve others is poverty in disguise. He told another parable. Once, a king filled his treasury with mountains of gold. But when a famine struck, he locked his gates. People died outside his palace walls. Finally, the king himself fell sick. He tried to eat his gold, but it gave him no life. Son, wealth is only real when it flows to others, like rivers. If it stays locked, it rots. Gold that doesn't feed, heal, or uplift is nothing but poverty wrapped in glitter. Arjun felt the truth slice into him. His old business had collapsed because he only chased profit. He had forgotten service. Now, he vowed to start again, not with greed, but with purpose. The weeks changed Arjun's heart. He began to rebuild his startup, this time with honesty, patience, and compassion. He treated his employees like family, valued his customers, and instead of running behind profit, he served people. Slowly, his business began to heal. And with it, so did his soul. Every day he carried the beggar's diary in his hands, like a compass pointing him to true wealth. The new year had begun. January's cold winds swept through New Delhi railway station, sharper than ever. Yet every morning, Arjun sat on the same bench, waiting for the beggar's wisdom. One morning, the beggar looked at Arjun and said, "You are healing, my son. But remember, transformation is not a moment, it is a journey. And this journey has more steps." He opened his diary and wrote another line. Rule number 7. If you want peace, stop competing. If you want joy, start serving. The beggar explained. A crow once tried to compete with a swan. The crow boasted of its speed, its cleverness, its freedom. But when it saw the swan gliding peacefully on the water, the crow felt restless and bitter. Competition breeds envy, but service breeds joy. The crow flew until it collapsed. The swan? It still swims peacefully today. Arjun sighed. He had always been a crow, competing, comparing, restless. Now he wanted to be a swan. Rule number 8. Your real treasure is the smile you bring to another face. The beggar's eyes softened as he recalled a memory. One night, many years ago, I had no food. A little boy from a nearby stall gave me a single banana. I ate it with joy, but what I remember most is not the banana. It was his smile. That smile was the true treasure, the gift I still carry. Remember, son, money fades, possessions break, but the joy you plant in another's heart becomes your eternal wealth. Arjun thought of his employees. He had once treated them like tools. Now he saw them as human beings. He began smiling at them, encouraging them, treating them with respect. And in return, he saw smiles that filled him with strength greater than profit. Rule number 9. The richest man is not the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least. The beggar leaned back against the cold bench and whispered, I once met a prince with 100 horses. Yet he wept because he wanted one more. Then I met a farmer with only one old cow. He sang as if he owned the world. True wealth is freedom from endless wanting. Need less, and you will live more. Arjun closed his eyes, letting the words sink deep. For years, he had been chained by wants, bigger offices, bigger contracts, bigger fame. Now, he longed only for peace, love, and purpose. On January 3rd, 2020, Arjun rushed to the station with excitement. His business had just received a breakthrough. He wanted to thank the beggar, his silent teacher, for everything. But when he reached platform 6, the bench was empty. The beggar was gone. Arjun searched desperately, through crowds of vendors, through waiting rooms, across platforms. But there was no sign of the man who had changed his life. All that remained was the old diary, lying on the cold stone floor. With trembling hands, Arjun picked it up. On the final page, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "One day, the beggar, the man who asked for nothing, yet gave everything, was gone. No one knows where he went. Maybe he walked to another corner of the world. Maybe he passed away. No one has any clue even today. But one thing is certain, his 9 rules are still alive, waiting to change your life." Tears blurred Arjun's vision. For the first time in years, he wept, not out of despair, but out of gratitude. Arjun's life transformed because he chose to live by these rules. And today, the same choice stands before you. Do you want your life to change? Don't just hear this story, live it. Stop chasing coins and approval, and start living by the wisdom of a beggar who owned nothing, yet had everything. Even practicing just one of these rules can begin to change your day, your mind, and your life. Little by little, the world will feel lighter, your heart fuller, and your steps calmer. Remember, true wealth is not in what you hold, but in what you give, the kindness you spread, and the peace you carry. Now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments, which of these 9 rules touched you?